Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Art of Tracking radio show. Tracking is still alive and well. Join us as we interview master trackers from around the world. We'll hear their stories, their secrets. So tune in and enjoy all you hear. Welcome. Hello, everyone. Today we have a very, very special guest. I absolutely love this man's writings and teachings. Any old school folk that have been around have heard of him and read his articles all the way back to like '95 in Wilderness Way magazine, and he has so many publications out. He has a teaching drum outdoor school in Three Lakes, Wisconsin, and Tamarack Song to me is just a legend and has so much to teach and share. How you doing tonight, Tamarack? Oh, wait, I got you on mute. Sorry. How's it going, Tamarack?
Okay. It's going beautifully. Thanks, Weasel Bear. I'm glad to be here. I'm doing well, and I hope you're doing as well, too.
Yes, sir. Tracking and the whole world of tracking is great. And to me, and as everyone is about to find out, you have a whole different way of bringing nature to life and sharing and teaching. Your method goes so far back into the ancient realm of teaching, sharing, and mentoring and modeling. It's outstanding. Before we actually start about the tracking part of it, I've read a lot of your writings and stuff through the past, and the one that I thought was really cool was how to share nature with mosquitoes. What were some of your tips on?
Boy, that is a great opening question because it has everything to do with my approach to nature, and that is to let nature teach me. And that's just what the mosquitoes did. When I was a kid, I remember walking out in the backyard in the springtime when the mosquitoes were just hatching, when they were first coming out, and they would get thicker and thicker as the days went by. And I'd noticed that it depended upon where I stood as to how many mosquitoes were around me. If I stood in the sun, there were hardly any because I found out later that mosquitoes dehydrate real easily. So if you get out in the full sun, they're gone. They're down in the brush and such, keeping hydrated. And if you get into a little breeze, you get out from the trees or get up on a hillside where there's a breeze, the mosquitoes, they can't fly very fast, actually. In fact, they're very easy to outrun. That's another way to do it. I remember when I was a kid, I'd have a cloud of mosquitoes around me, and I'd just be going crazy. And I'd run a little ways and stop, and no mosquitoes. I left them all behind me. They were very easy to outrun. So this is the way I learned, just letting mosquito speak to me, just letting mosquito talk, rather than running to Mom and saying, "Hey, Mom, where's the bug repellent?" I just developed a relationship with them, and they told me what to do.
Yes, your ability to interpret what's going on and to learn and read nature, to me, is absolutely fascinating. Can you tell me about teaching drum outdoor school?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. First of all, I want to thank you for the introduction. It was very kind. Boy, it's like I paid you to do that. It was really, really generous. Thanks.
No, really, I'm absolutely thrilled and humbled and honored to even be able to talk to you because, I at this point, back then when I started, back then it was like, where does he come up with this absolutely accurate and fascinating knowledge? It's always that invisible knowledge that I've always looked for and hunted for, and it just flows from you. So it's really cool, really.
Yeah. Well, thanks. The beauty of it is that this knowledge is available to all of us. It's our birthright. We are nature. We all have this intrinsic relationship with nature. That's where we came from, and that's where we're going to go back to. We can try to escape it all we want. Some people do, unfortunately, and that's part of my role in life, and I know it's yours too, to help reconnect people with the natural realm again. And once we do that, there it is. There's all the knowledge. And we have our ancestral knowledge too. There's so much that's imprinted in our DNA because we evolved in nature. We are nature. So it's just awakening that again, getting out of our rational minds and listening to our intuitive voices. And there it is. It just starts popping up again. Getting to your question about the school.
Yes.
I started it about 25 years ago, partly because I was just teaching people informally. They would come around, and I'd have friends, and they'd bring friends up. I was living alone up north in the wilderness. I had a cabin back in the woods, completely off the grid, without electricity, etc. And people so much enjoyed coming up, and we'd go out canoeing or go out on hikes or out gathering wild foods. Whatever we were doing, that was the format for what was really going on, and that was developing relationship. It's all about relationship. And people appreciated that so much. They might learn a few plants or something, but that was really secondary. You can get that out of a book, or you can go to a workshop. What they really liked was relationship. And I realized, oh boy, there's so much to share here, and the typical workshop just doesn't get into this much depth. And that's what I really wanted to do. And then I went out to the Northwest. I went out to see a native elder, and he took me up on a mountain to quest for my vision, and I fasted up there. And what I was told was that I am to be a bridge to help to bring the wisdoms and the teachings of the old way to our contemporary people, to today's people, because it's so needed. And right then and there, I knew it. This is just my calling. And I came back and started the school.
Man, that's awesome. I love that. Just for example, if a person was to come up and take a course, what would maybe an average day? Just pick out any random day of what it would be like to be up there at your school.
You bet. The day starts at dawn. The birds are singing. The horizon is brightening. You can feel the energy in the air. The deer are out browsing. The night animals are going to sleep, and the day animals are waking up. So you've got this overlap of all this energy. There's a lot of predation going on. The predators are taking advantage of the movement. So we're waking up at dawn. And we're out in the wilderness, by the way. We have a primitive camp out in the wilderness of 6 or 7 wigwams, and these are primitive bark lodges, round domed lodges of the kind that the Northern Ojibwe built here. And I learned from the elders, from the traditional people, how to build them. And we stay in the lodges, and first thing we do is get up and go down to the lake to drink. And we drink directly out of the lake. This is clean water here. We're one of the 3 areas. We're one of the 3 areas in the country that is the cleanest. You can actually drink the water. You have to get used to it first. There's a process. But once you do, we don't carry any canteens, no water bottles. We come to a stream, we come to a pond, we come to a little hole in the bog, we just drink the water. Just like all the other animals. It's beautiful. And that's really a metaphor for what we do in the classes here. One thing we don't do is say, well, at 10 o'clock this morning, we're going to get together for a fire-making workshop. Everything is within the context of the Lifeway, it's an immersion experience. We get up in the morning. If we want to cook something for the first meal, for the morning meal, we have to make a fire. So necessity is the mother of invention, you know. So if you can't make a fire, you don't cook your food. You have to eat it raw. Now we have motivation. Now that brings up our passion, and it works. Oh, let me tell you, Weasel Bear, there are people who they've never been out in the woods before, or they just think they're so bumbling that they can't do things. In a few days, they're making fire. It's just amazing. It's because they want to. It's because they need to. It's beautiful.
That's
awesome. It's so nice. And then it depends on the day. We might go out gathering, for example. Maybe we're picking berries. We wait till the dew burns off, so that things are dry. It's better to gather things when they're dry, because if you gather them wet, they spoil so easily. They can get moldy. And, we have no refrigeration in the wilderness, so you want to gather it in its prime. Also, when you gather things in full sun, the plants have their full energy up there, too. Photosynthesis is going on, the sap is running, everything is right up there in the leaves and the buds. So we'll go out gathering, maybe, mid to late morning. In the afternoon, well, first of all, what's important is that when you're living in a clan, and we do everything in a clan context, our camp is organized like a clan. We have talking circles. We have group projects. We're building a lodge, for example. Everybody gets together and cooperates. And we do that. If we have a project going, we serve the clan first. And so if we're building a lodge, for example, in the morning, after the morning meal, we'll get together and work on the lodge. And then in the afternoon, we have time for individual pursuits. If people want to go out exploring or working on a craft or something. And in the evening, we get together around the fire. We have a fire every evening. The hearth is the center of life for Native people. The hunters and gatherers are coming in from the day. The elders are there sitting around the fire. The children are listening to the stories of the hunters and the scouts coming in. And that's just what we do. We share our stories at night. And we ask questions. The kids are there. We have family year-longs where we have families. Last year we had 17 children here in the wilderness. It was great. And
wow.
They had their own hearth. It was beautiful. They had their own hearth. They learned to make their own fires. 10-year-olds were making fire, with fire by friction, bow drill, gathering their own firewood, preparing their own food. They were butchering their own deer. It was great. Fully capable of that. And that's what Native kids do. They, kids play house. When we're little, we want to do what our dads did. Boys will have a little toolkit, to emulate what Dad does, and the girls have dolls and doll houses, and they have tea parties and that sort of thing, and dress up. Well, Native kids do the same thing. They see what the adults are doing, and they're doing the same thing in their own scale, and that's how they learn. They learn through example and experience. So that's happening in the evening. And then when the sun sets, everybody's in bed. There are no electric lights. There's no artificial daylight. So the day is pretty much done. And when you're up with the dawn anyway, you want to go to bed because you're tired. You put in a day, a physical day. And it feels so good, Weasel Bear. The real beauty of this Lifeway is that everything is for a purpose, and everything, even the small things like going to bed that we just kind of take for granted oftentimes, feels so good because you've exhausted yourself intellectually and emotionally and physically, and you've accomplished something with your hands and your body and your mind, and you just feel tired. It feels as though you deserve that sleep. And you lay down and you just smile, you reflect on the day, and you drift into sleep and listen to your dreams. Oh, that's one other thing I ought to mention. We share dreams every morning to pick up on our dream messages to see what kind of guidance we're being given. And that helps us in our days. So that's the short of it. That's what a typical day would be like. Of course, they all vary. It depends on the season. It depends on what's being done. there might be trapping going on, there might be exploring. It really depends. Or gathering materials for making willow baskets or fish traps. Could be
Sure.
fishing.
That's awesome, man. That is really awesome. I'll have to make it up there someday.
Oh, you're welcome anytime. We'd be glad to have you.
Well, last year I bought one of your books, and it was called Entering the Mind of the Tracker. And I got to tell you, it has been a mind-blowing journey. I have to take that book in small chunks because there's so much in it. There's just so much in this book. It's over the top. It has become one of my favorite books without a doubt.
Wow.
For real,
Yeah.
Like, Chapter 2, Romancing the Frog, if I asked you to maybe dig into this, hearing the rhythms of the natural world, I wonder if you could share some of that with the listeners.
Sure. For me, that the story you're talking about is some of my experience with frogs. You think, frogs, they go a ribbit and jump when you in the water when you walk by. But boy, they have a fascinating life, and they actually live in community with each other, believe it or not. Part of the story there is about me being out with some students once, and we were sitting around the fire at night, and the frogs are singing. It was mid-spring, and the spring peepers were out. And anyone who's been in the North Woods, the spring peepers just drive you crazy. There's this this high-pitched song that they're all.
Yeah.
That's it, and there are thousands of them doing it. And I think it could literally drive you crazy if someone tied you up out in the middle of the swamp and there was just this din of frog song. Oh. And we were sitting there, and we noticed that there were quiet spots, and the quiet spots were moving. You heard all this song, and then in this one spot there was no song, and it just moved along, and it was strange. It was like this shadow that dropped, that descended over the thousands of frogs, and it just moved, and they were wondering what was happening. Why is that? So what I do, I don't give answers. What I do is I ask questions, and I help them to discover on their own so that it's their knowledge. So it's not just, Tamarack said that, so I know that's true because he said so and he knows a lot and blah, blah, blah. Well, they're discovering it on their own. So I used a series of questions to help them to discover what was going on. And what it was, without giving too much of the story away, you might want to read it sometime, but there's a lot more to it. What it was is that there was a predator going through, probably a fox this time, although it could have been a mink or a raccoon, and you can tell by how fast the animal is moving and whether the animal is on out in the water or up on the bank moving as to who the animal is. And when the predator comes by, the frog's quiet, for a radius of, I don't know, it depends upon how fast the animal's moving and how much a threat. For a radius of maybe 20 or 30 feet around the animal, the frogs quit singing. Now, the fox was drawn to the song of the frogs. Hey, here's a meal. There's all these frogs out there. But
Right.
She gets there, and where are they? They all went quiet on me, However, she's surrounded by this din of frogs, and she can't think straight. She can't pick out any individual song because there are these thousands of frogs singing all the way around. However, they're all out of reach. And as soon as she goes for that sound, they're quiet around her again. So you see how it's working here. And it's clever. I mean, these frogs are cooperating. They've learned this over time. They've learned that there's strength in numbers, and they're helping each other to survive. So that's a part of the story that's just so beautiful to me, because it shows that if we just listen, yes, I could have gone, or someone could have gone online to look up what's going on, but to experience it, you never forget it. Here, I have my story to tell. It's not just, I went to this web page and it said they do it for this and that reason. It's more like I was sitting out there on this island in the bog, and I was with these other people, and this and that was happening. You start telling your story, and that's how we evolve to learn through story, and that's because it sticks. You remember stories, facts. In our short-term memory, we forget 95% after 15 minutes. It's just gone. We don't remember all that stuff. This is the information age. We're bombarded with facts all the time. We don't remember most of that. But stories, they stick. We evolved with stories. We have a story memory. And I can bring up that story. And when I tell the story, I'm not just talking about why the frogs quit singing. In that story is so many other pieces of information that are embedded in the story, and the story becomes a teaching, and that's the way with stories. It's just such a beautiful way to share.
That's what I love about this book and all of your writings is it's almost, I don't know how to explain it exactly. It's full of knowledge, and it's almost as though it is a, like Native American lore that has been passed down through generations. It's just outstanding work. I really love your reading, your stories. What would you like to talk about as far as tracking goes? Do you have any idea or anything you might want to start with?
Well, how many days do we have? I'd like to get right down to the essence, I think, to start with. I'm a man of perspective. My animal guide is Owl, and Owl is really great for just sitting there and taking it all in. Owl has great eyesight and great hearing, and that's what I do, and that's what I like to help other people connect with. And your program is called The Art of Tracking, and that's really a good place to start because that's what it's all about. Some people think tracking is a technical skill, and there is a technical element there because there are gaits and track patterns and push-ups and pressure releases and all that kind of stuff that can be learned. However, with the natives I studied with, they have no idea what a pressure release is like or a push-up. The way they track is the way a wolf tracks, and that is by becoming the animal they're tracking, by being hungry. Just the way I talked about fire making here in our classes, if you want a fire and you're hungry, you're going to make a fire so that you can feed yourself. Well, it's the same with tracking. If any of you listeners have hunting dogs or you've been around hunting dogs, you know that they're not taken out after you feed them. You take them out hungry because then their senses are keened. Now you're going to see them. You're going to see them track, and it's the same with us. When I track hungry. Now it depends on what I'm tracking. I'm hungry for whatever's there. If I'm looking for fresh water to drink, for example, and I've got my canteen with me, and it's no big deal. If I find water, great. If not, I've got water with me. How impassioned am I going to be to find that water? And I'm tracking water right there. Everything we do is tracking. We talk about keeping track of our keys or keeping track of the kids. Where are they now? Or just getting across town. It's tracking. I have to watch for the sign, and sometimes it's literal signs, stop signs, street signs, whatever. I'm tracking. On the Internet, I'm going on the Internet. I'm tracking something down on the Internet. So much of what we do is using our tracking skill. It's innate. So when someone says, hey, I don't know anything about tracking, I'd like you to teach me, I say, oh, wait a minute, that's an assumption, And I give them the same spiel I'm giving you folks right now. you already are a tracker. And if you can recognize that, you're not going to be helpless and victimized here. You're going to be empowered. You're going to take what you already know. You have this innate skill. It's imprinted in your DNA. Let's go out and use it. So we get out right away, and I show them, hey, can you get across town? How do you do it? Okay, look at this and that sign. It's the same thing. We're reading signs here in the woods. And right away, Weasel Bear, it starts clicking. It's beautiful.
Wow.
So that's where I'd like to start here, because what we're starting with is who we are, what makes us human, and that is we are predators, we're hunters. That's how we got here. We're trackers.
Yeah.
We're instant trackers. We've got it. All we have to do is get out of the way. We start thinking too much, and right away we're shutting down that intuitive ability. Our egos get involved. I've not been in the woods much, and I haven't studied before this workshop and all that kind of stuff, and I hope I don't sound too dumb, and all the stuff that goes on in your mind. That's the ego. We're so much more than our egos, and once we connect with that, we just come alive, and anybody comes alive. It's a part of all of us. Does that help? Does that give a good start? Are you there? Do we have a connection?
Yes. I think you're dead on accurate. I never really thought of it that way. Yep.
Great. This is great. I'm sure enjoying this sharing. I'm looking forward to where we might be going.
In case you're just joining us, this is Tracker Radio Show. We're proud and honored to have Tamarack Song on with us, and we're just talking some tracking. So, Tamarack, if you were to, take somebody out, what are some of the animals that are most common in your area, and maybe a little bit of their natural history?
Yeah, you bet. Well, deer are common here, white-tailed deer. They are a creature of the edge, actually. Some people think they're creatures of the woods. They take refuge in the woods for sure, but there's not much to eat in the woods. They use the woods for shelter. Their travel lanes are oftentimes through patches of forest or through forest edge. But they're out browsing on the fresh herbs and the tender shoots of the brush most of the time. So we have a lot of edge up here. The North Woods is actually not solid woods at all. We have bog and lake shores and stream sides, and there are some open areas too caused by logging or forest fires, and the young growth comes up just thick after a forest fire, and the deer and the grouse and the snowshoe hare, and we have a few moose there and there, and of course all the predators and the birds and everything that is living together in a symbiotic relationship. So we start with deer, and what I'd like to do is to use deer as number one. Everybody knows deer. Everybody's seen a deer. Everybody can recognize a deer. Deer footprints are easy to recognize. Deer scat is easy to recognize. They're not too shy. They're fairly easy to find so that we can observe them. So what we do is, first of all, I ask them for their stories. What do you know about deer? Do you have deer in your? Do they come in through your backyard, or do you have a park or woods nearby where you live, or when you get out hiking, what do you know about deer? That's where we start, and then we build from there. And sometimes I'll help them to see, again, just like with trackings, to help them to see that they're trackers. I help them to see that they already know something about deer. I'll ask them, well, what do deer eat? What do you know about deer? Do you know when they go into the rut, when they're mating? And just to see what they know and help to bring that forth, and that helps to build their self-confidence. And we go from there, and they'll say, maybe, I know that they go into the rut in the autumn because my uncle goes deer hunting in the autumn, and the bucks are out, chasing the does around, and they're not paying much attention right then, and that's the best time to hunt. And then I asked, well, when do they have their fawns? Do you know that? And he said, well, the fawns come in the springtime, I think. And, it's late spring, early summer maybe, and we have some track there. And I say, oh, look at the tracks here. And, there's a doe track with a fawn right beside, or maybe two fawns, maybe twins. And now it's clicking. Oh, yeah. Now I see why I have the fawn tracks now. It's springtime, and we just build from there. And then we just evolve it. I'll ask, well, what do deer eat? What do you know about what they eat? And they say, oh, they're plant eaters, and okay. Well, let's follow these tracks. And we follow them, and we go up to some nettles. The tracks are going into a nettle patch, and the tops of the nettles are nipped off. And they're putting two and two together. Oh, the deer are eating nettles here. That's why they came out into this meadow. And you see how it works. It's just on and on like that. And they're making their own discoveries. I'm just a catalyst, If someone asks me something, I say, I don't know. Let's go discover. Let's see what the deer tell us. Let's see what the meadow plants tell us here. They're our teacher. I'm not the teacher. I can just rattle off some facts and figures. That's not teaching. You can do just as well opening a book. Forget it. That's not me. I'm not going to do that. I haven't done a workshop like that for 30 years or so. I just don't do it. And this is what I learned from the Indians. When I was little, I remember when I was 6 years old, my dad brought home an Indian man for a guy was hitchhiking, and brought him home for a meal. We had chili that night. I still remember. I remember the pink bowl I was eating out of. I was so excited. Oh, a real live Indian right at our dinner table,
Wow.
And I started asking him questions. He was from a reservation. It was about 50 miles north of where we lived. And I started asking him questions. First of all, some dumb questions. 6-year-old kid who watches Westerns on TV. I asked him if he had a headdress and he lived in a teepee, And after a couple of those questions, the guy was really kind and polite. I was just a little kid. And my dad said, maybe you're talking too much. That's essentially what he said, Just, how about if we eat? And I was embarrassed at first. Oh, yeah, gee, I'm being really dumb here, I'm a dumb kid. And then he started talking. He started telling some stories. And it wasn't so much what he said, but how he said it. I don't remember half of what he said. It was just his sense of presence. He was centered there, and he was calm, and he was respectful, and he listened to me no matter what I said or didn't say. And I learned how to be right there. It was a beautiful example. That's what I was learning from the animals at the time. I was 5, 6 years old. Right after school, I'd throw my books down and I'd run out the door. And I was out in the woods, in the backyard, in the fields, the hay meadows. And I wouldn't get my homework done, and I'd have to stay after school the next day. And, I felt terrible because I wasn't doing so well in school. But I felt so good after school again, I'm just running out there again. And what I learned in the woods, that was a way of being. And that's what this Indian man was reflecting to me. He was mirroring that back to me. And I just sensed that, I'm on track. Look at this guy. This guy's a real Indian, and look how he is. And this is the way the birds are, and this is the way the raccoons are that I watch walking the fence line and back. And they're just there. They're present. They're observant. They're listening. They're not talking all the time. They're not running around like crazy. They're connected. They're picking up on everything that's going on, and they have to, because that's how they survive. That's how they live. That's how they find their food. That's how they take care of their young. Just being connected. It's all about relationship. And this man was in relationship with me. We didn't know each other, but we were connected. That's relationship. And when I walk in the woods, that's what I know now. That's what I do. I might have never been in this this patch of woods before, but I'm in relationship with it right away. These are my kin. These are literally my brothers and my sisters. The birds I'm hearing, the caterpillars crawling up this tree trunk. I know what they're doing. I know why they're there. They know why I'm there. We're all part of the hoop of life. We're all connected. Let's do it. It's just, this passion for life. It's beautiful.
That is awesome. That is outstanding.
I might have gotten sidetracked here. I forgot your question. I don't know if I really answered it, but
no,
that's
okay. I was just listening.
Right.
It's awesome, man.
Right,
we were
great.
just talking about animals and
that's
their
right.
history.
That's
right.
That's right.
How do you help people learn to see that more subtle sign? The track in between the tracks.
A good question. That's really important. There's a real difference between looking and seeing. And in the culture we grew up in, we are conditioned to be focused, to look. Look here, pay attention. Look at what's in this book, look at what's on this screen. Look at this task in front of you at work. Hey, look at that. That's what you need to do. They don't want you to see, because seeing is gaining perspective. When you step back and see, you take in so much more than if you're focused looking. And that's what intuitive tracking, what native tracking is all about to me. It's seeing rather than looking. Rather than putting on my blinders so that I'm looking just at that track down there and studying that track, I'm taking a step back and I'm taking in the whole thing. Oh, there's a track. Let's see. Where's this trail going through? Is the animal alone? Why is the animal going through here? Oh, that's a deer. We'll use deer for the example again. And I see the deer is leaving the meadow and going into the woods. Oh, I wonder if this track was laid last night, and maybe the deer is going into bed down under those balsam trees there. I know they bed down under there, and I start putting it together. Just because I backed up and I allow myself to see the bigger picture, to see with perspective. So that's essentially it. That's what tracking's all about for me. It's seeing. It's the art of seeing. Paul Resendez has a book out, and the title is Tracking and the Art of Seeing. It's a great book, by the way. I want to recommend it. If anyone doesn't have it, Paul's a friend. We have a good time getting out when tracking when we get together. And his book helps to bring that concept across.
Yeah, I love that book. I've read that one several times. Now, you mentioned intuitive. Yeah, you mentioned intuitive tracking. Explain a little bit more about that.
It's the way a wolf tracks. The wolves, they don't read books. They don't go to workshops. They track for a living. If they don't track, they don't eat. And they know how to do it. They're designed to do it. They have a great sense of smell. They have fairly good eyesight. They have a good sense of hearing. Not great at all, but they have a good sense of hearing. Their physical build is designed for just traveling. They can travel. They can lope and just go and go and go. And they're built high enough to be efficient runners and low enough that they can keep their nose to the ground at the same time. So just the way they're put together. And they've got narrow shoulders. If you've ever seen a wolf or a picture of a wolf, they're not broad-shouldered like some of our dogs. They're narrow-shouldered so that they can maneuver easily and they can get between things. And they're just, their grace on their feet, they just float. They're just beautiful to watch. And the wolves will track intuitively. They just know what to do. And dogs, they're descended from wolves and they inherited this ability. And you watch a dog, and then what does a dog do? You take a dog out, what does a dog do? The first thing a dog does is sniff, right? sniffing around, trying to pick up on some track to see what's around, and a dog picks up on something and takes off. I remember a husky I had named Zhivago. We'd go out and we grew up together, and we were a pack. We were part of the pack, except when he picked up a scent, and he was gone. I mean, I could holler at him, scream at him, it didn't matter. He was off. That's what he was designed to do. And I didn't want to break him of that. I realized after a while that, hey, he's doing what he's in his bliss right now. I don't want to interfere with that. I don't want anyone to interfere with my bliss. I don't want him to be a yes dog, hey, sit, heel, blah, blah. Oh, no. Do I want to do that? I would never do that with another animal. I would never do it with another human. So I let him go, and he came back when he was ready. And if I could keep up with him, I'd run with him, and I learned so much from him. It was great. And the same thing with the wolves I lived with. I lived with a pack of wolves when I was in my 20s. Same
wow.
thing. I listened to them. Oh, yeah, I'd love to. In a short, I know we don't have all night, but I'll just give you the short version of it. I was in my early 20s, and I had a record store at the time, a music store. I wanted to make some money. I wanted to buy some land out in the North Woods, and I thought, oh, hey, I'm really into music. I will open a record store. And I did. And what I did in my spare time and my weekends, I'd be up north, out in the woods doing things, and everybody I knew that, and they knew I wasn't going to be the shopkeeper for the rest of my life. I was just doing this because I like music, but also because it was a means to an end. And one of the guys I knew who was a regular customer, he came in to buy albums regularly, and he said, hey, I was just up north and at this little roadside zoo up in the tourist area here, up in the lakes area up north. You have these little tourist traps, and sometimes they have animals. They have a couple deer in a cage and maybe a bear and some raccoons, and to draw the kids in, and they sell little trinkets. They have a gift shop and some food they sell and that sort of thing. And he said, hey, there was this pair of wolves at this one gift shop. It was called the Trout Ranch, and it was up there on Highway 64. You know where that is? And I said, yeah, I drove by there already. I don't remember the gift shop or the zoo though, but he said, yeah, it's there. It's tucked in a little bit. There's a faded sign, they're not doing very well, but it's there. And I said, oh yeah, I know I know where about it is. I could find it. Why are you telling me about it? And he said, well, they have a pack of wolves that just had pups, and I thought you might be interested in that, because he knew I was into wolves. Wolves are the symbol of the wilderness, and the reason I had huskies, I had sled dogs, was because they're wolf-like. They have, they're not, the Eskimo people, the Inuit, would oftentimes cross their dogs back with wolves to get some fresh blood in there. And he said, you really ought to go up and talk with him, because he's got these pups, or just to see him. And I said, yeah, I'll get up there. And I got someone to fill in for me at the shop, and I took off. And I went up, and I had already taken the pups away from the parents. They were about 11 days old. And the reason they did it was because once the pups are imprinted on their parents, it's really hard to get them imprinted on humans. And I knew that. This wasn't the first litter of pups they raised. So they had two teenage daughters in their early teens, 10, 11, 12 years old. And they had the pups in the bathtub, so they wouldn't poop all over the house. And they had little pink and blue ribbons tied around their necks. They were just making little dolls out of them, little cuddly little puppies. And they were beautiful. They were these little chocolate fur balls, and they just cuddle up in your arms. And the girls just loved them. So the girl puppies had pink ribbons around their necks, and the boy puppies had blue ribbons around their necks, and they were bottle feeding them and just having a great time with them. And I, first of all, the guy took me out in the pen to see the parents, and what a sad story, Weasel Bear. There was this pen. It might have been 10 by 15 feet, something like that. And here was a pair of wolves. Can you imagine that? A pair of wolves that the pack runs in a territory that might be 10 by 10 miles. You know, this is their territory.
Miles.
Miles.
Man.
And here they've got feet, mere feet. 3 paces, and they're at the end of their pen. So what do?
Man.
Yeah, you get the story, pacing back and forth. So here's the female. She was laying there, and just laying there as though she were just existing, not living anymore. She was laying on her side. Her teats were swollen with milk, and the hair was shed from her belly so the pups could find the nipples easily. And she looked half dead. She just didn't have any will to live anymore. And tears came to my eyes. And he, oh boy, and he, her mate, was just pacing back and forth behind her, just back and forth and back and forth. And I didn't say anything. I couldn't say anything. I realized that this was the fate of these animals, and if I could rescue these animals, I would. And I was hatching a plan already in my head to come sneak in at night with wire cutters, and
wow.
I didn't get. Yeah, boy. So he said, "Hey, I've got the pups in the house. Would you like to see them?" Because he knew I was really interested in wolves, and he took me in. I'm sure not everyone who stops at the zoo gets to go in the house and look at the pups, but he took me in, and I was really grateful. And there they were. There were 4 pups in the bathtub, and the girls were there, fawning over them. And I asked what was going to happen to them. Obviously, they didn't have a lot of space. It wasn't that big a zoo, and they'd have a whole pack if they let the pups raise up with the adults. And he said, "Well, I don't know. We're going away this weekend, and we've got the pups, and we're going to have to get a babysitter for them, or I don't know what to do with them. We're kind of stuck here." And I said, "Well, would you like to sell them?" And I wasn't in any place to buy wolf pups at the time. I didn't have I was living upstairs in the store. I didn't have a place. However, this was my. There was no question here. This is just what I was going to do. If I could rescue these pups, I was going to, and then I was going to come back and see if I could get the adults, either buy them or spring them or whatever. And he said, "Yeah, I'll sell them. I got to do something with them." And I asked how much, and he said, $200 a piece. And I thought, whoa, it's a lot of money. This was back in 1971, and $200 was a lot of money back then.
Sure.
And I was saving up money to buy land. And I said, "Well, will you take $400 for the 4? And he said yes right away.
Nice.
He was just glad. He was just glad to sell them. I'm sure he would have been grateful for the $200 a piece. They could have used the money, but I'm sure the $400 helped him too, and I was glad for that. So I had 4 wolf pups, and they put them in a lined box for me, and showed me what they were feeding them, and they gave me a couple of bottles and some formula to get going with, and I put them beside me in the seat. They weren't going in the trunk. They weren't going in the back seat. They were right beside me in the car, and
nice.
right there. And I had my hand on them the whole drive home. They were smelling and sniffing and sucking on my fingertips. It was just beautiful for making that connection. And took them home, and I built a little outdoor pen for them right away. I had them inside at first. I got a bigger box for them because they were, in a den. They just had a small enclosed area that helps them stay together to keep each other warm. And I bottle fed them, and I'd cuddle with them. I was their mother. And their eyes opened after a day or two. They opened at 11 or 12 days. It didn't take long. And they imprinted on me right away. I was their mom. And right away they started working out their pack hierarchy too. They started climbing on each other and working out their dominance. And as they grew, to be 3 and 4 weeks of age, they were functioning as a pack already, believe it or not. It was just inside them. And they were starting to hunt right away. Boy, as soon as they could move around, they were starting to sneak up on each other and pounce on each other, We think of it as a game, just like our games. When we grow up, we're playing tag and hide and seek. Well, what are those games? They are training for the hunt. And people don't realize this, but our childhood games are the same thing as the games the wolves play. And dog pups, the games that they're playing, yeah, they're having fun with it, but that's a serious business. They are training for survival, for making a living. And it's not that it's not fun, don't get me wrong. I call them games because they are. But the hunt is a game. How many hunters will tell you that they don't like hunting, that they don't get a rush out of it, that they don't feel empowered, they don't feel like a man when they're out hunting? Yeah, you bet. The adrenaline's pumping. Everything we're designed to do is being put into high gear here. This is how we evolved. This is our ancestral memories are coming to life. You bet it's fun. And this is what tracking's all about for me. And this is what I was learning from living with these wolves. So I grew up with these 4 pups, and they integrated me into their pack. I was their mother to start with. And I was the alpha male, which is the dominant male in the pack. And, once they grew up, they respected me for that. And after a while, I just bowed out and said, hey, I want to be a member of the pack. I am a member of the pack. I don't want to be the alpha male, though. You guys teach me. I've brought you up to this point. Now let's switch roles. And we did. And I was a pack member. And the big male named Desham Nashak. I had an Indian friend who gave me Indian names for them, which means Earth Thunderer, because he weighed 110 pounds. He was big. He was brawny. But he acted like a little puppy. He wasn't really the dominant male. There was another male who weighed about 70 pounds, and his name was Wolfie. Just Wolfie. He got the nickname. I don't remember who named him, but it just stuck. His Indian name didn't stick. You just called him Wolfie. And he had the temperament. He had the character of being the alpha male, the leader. So I just let him be. And he was probably going to force himself on me anyway if I didn't, submit to him. And I did, and he became the alpha male. And I was a pack member. And, Weasel Bear, it's so beautiful to feel as though you're a part of family, this type of family, a pack family, because there's such trust and camaraderie there. When I would go to join them, I had some acreage, and I fenced in a big area where they could run. And when I opened that gate and went in with them, and it was attached to my house, so my house was a part of their territory. And when I went in there to join them, and before we would go out running, I would open the gate and we'd go out running, or when they got later on, I couldn't let them run all the time because some new houses were going up behind me. But anyway, at first we'd go out running together. And when I went in to join them, they would come and they'd be jumping all over me, and I'd just lay down and I'd expose my belly, the same way a dog does when a dog is submissive. That's what the wolves do, and that's what I did. And they'd be all over me, and the alpha male would have his mouth open and over my neck. I exposed my neck just to show my trust and my vulnerability. Imagine doing that with an alpha male wolf. Wow. And I had no problem, complete trust. He'd pounce on my chest and he'd growl, and he'd ruffle his ruff on his back, and he'd snarl in my face and, right over my neck. And it's all display. It's all just working out the order of the pack. And it's me respecting his power. Hey, I see you're in good shape. This is what he's telling me. I see you're right there. You're present. You're taking care of people. You've got your full capacity of your senses. Thanks for telling me this, buddy. And then I would scratch his neck, and I'd sniff around his ears, and I'd roll him over. We'd start scuffling and playing and wrestling and stuff, and pretty soon the whole pack would be, we'd all be rolling around together. It is just this camaraderie that is just there. It didn't matter whether I said the right thing or the wrong thing, or whether someone was mad at me or not, as in so many human relationships. We were just present, and this is what has to be in real life, because you cannot afford to be mad at someone. You can't afford to carry a grudge. You can't afford to try to manipulate someone. You have to be there. You have to be a functioning organ in the organism, because at any time an alert signal could go out. One of the pack was always a scout. One of them was always out there watching the periphery. And if we heard a whimper or a sharp bark is shows that there's more of an emergency than a whimper, we had to respond like that, and we had to be together, and we had to be connected. We had to have this emotional and this intuitive connection, because we had to adapt and adjust to whatever was going on the spot. And you don't do that when you're mad at somebody or you're angry. You're cowling in the next room, and all the stuff that we can do when we go through our contortions in civilized life. If we were living our human clan way, it would be the same thing. We would have to resolve things right there. If there was a conflict, and there is conflict, we would sit down right there, and we would unpack it, we would get it clear, and we would feel good about each other again so we could be functional. And that's what the wolves did. They had a scuffle over something, they worked it out, and they were buddies again, just like that. And that's what I learned. That's what I learned. I learned how to live as a respectful human from these wolves. Because at the time, these wolves were my family. I felt closer to them than I did to any humans. And in a big way, I wished I was a wolf. I just wished I could take off in the wilderness with them. And not entirely, because I felt a responsibility to my own kind too. I'm not saying I didn't want to be human, but I had that wish. It was there. And there it is. I learned honor and respect, and I learned to see, and I learned to track by becoming a wolf.
Wow. That is awesome, man. I mean, how rare is that? I guess I could only wish for something like that. Wow. Well, Tamarack, in case anybody's just joining us, this is the Tracker Radio Show. We have Tamarack Song on with us, proprietor of the Teaching Drum School in Wisconsin. We're talking a little bit about tracking and his stories and history, and a little bit about his book, Entering the Mind of the Tracker. So I was looking through the chapters. I'm out right now. I'm out of my own home in Arkansas, and I'm doing some work in Oregon, so I don't have my library with me. But I took a picture of the chapters in the book, so maybe I could touch base on some of the things that I had seen in the book and read. I hadn't even made it through the book yet because I'm soaking it in like a sponge, and there's so much in there. It's just outstanding, the depth of knowledge that this man has. I'm looking at Chapter 12, A Sound Lesson in Tracking, How to Let Ears Become Eyes That Can See the Invisible Trail. Now, that, to me, is just an outstanding statement. Could you tell us a little bit about that, boss?
I sure could. We're so sight-oriented in our civilized life. 85% of what we take in is through our eyes. However, I learned some things from being out in the night, out in the dark in the woods. Starting when I was a kid. we'd be out playing games in the dark. We'd be playing hide and go seek and things in the dark. And you had to hear, because you couldn't always see somebody who was hiding in the shadows, but you might hear some giggling or some shuffling or something. And what happened here is that I was starting to use my other senses. Way back when I was a kid, I was not so sight-oriented, actually. I have poor eyesight. That probably helped. I was wearing glasses when I was 2 years old already, 3 years old. So I had to start relying on my other senses. And through hearing and through smell, I was starting to pick up on things. And what this story is all about, do you have an interruption on your end? Are we okay? I'm hearing some noise online. I'm wondering if we're all right.
Yeah,
we have a connection.
I'm sorry. We're okay.
Okay, good enough.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. So the title of this story is A Sound Lesson in Tracking, and the story is relating to the things I learned about hearing and about how we have binocular hearing, how we can tell direction, the direction that a sound is coming from. And if you lay your head over on the side, you can tell whether a sound is coming from lower or higher. And just tilt your head. If you watch an owl is moving his head back and forth. That's exactly what he's doing.
Wow.
It's called binocular hearing, and he's taking different sightings, sound sightings on a particular item. If it's me, if I'm disturbing him, or if he's hearing a mouse down in the leaves, he's moving his head back and forth and up and down. How owls bob their heads up and down. He's getting his bearings there, so he's taking these different bearings so that he can key in directly on that sound. And it can be pitch black, and the owl can hardly see, but the owl goes by hearing and just swoops right down, and boom, the mouse is his. So we have this capacity too if we know how to use it. So, by the way, there's a parallel with this with birds you often see. Do you notice how turkeys walk? They don't hold their heads steady when they walk, but they're bobbing their heads back and forth, right? And that is so that they can get their bearings on what they're seeing. They're getting different readings, different sight readings when they move. Pigeons move this way. Many other birds do. They're bobbing their heads back and forth. And that's just a little side note there. But getting back to sound tracking, I'll give a little synopsis of the story that's in the book. I was out at our primitive camp with two young students. One of them was 19. They might have both been 18, 19. And this was pitch black. A thunderstorm had moved in, and it was raining. The squall line had come through. It was still raining. And we were heading out to the trailhead, and I was following them. I usually go last in line. I almost always go last in line, because if I'm leading, nobody's learning anything. They're not learning orienteering. And we do it all without map and compass, by the way. We learn to read sign. We learn to see how the trees bend in the wind. That's the way they grow. We have the predominant southwesterly winds here. So the tips of the trees all point to the northeast. So if you want your direction and it's cloudy, you look up to the tree tips, especially the conifers. The tips are pointing to the northeast, so they tell you what that direction is. And there are other ways to tell, too. There are many other signs that you can read to get your bearings and your direction. However, at night, it's very hard to do that. So we had lost the trail. I realized when they stepped off the trail and it was dark and raining that this was happening, and I thought, whoa, that's okay. I'm not going to call them back. I might if we had to get somewhere at a particular time, but I thought, this is a great experience, a great teaching. So we were off the trail, and they didn't realize they were off the trail until 5 or 6 steps into the woods. And once you're off the trail, forget finding it again, because it's worse than finding a needle in a haystack. If you're walking parallel to the trail and you walk back on it, that's fine. But when you're following a little deer trail and you step across it at night, you never know you stepped across it. You just don't know, because the trail is only 6 or 8 inches wide. Very hard to find unless you get down on your hands and knees and feel. So they were bumbling around for a while, and they realized they were lost, and they were concerned because it was a cool rain, and they're concerned about getting soaked and hypothermic and being lost, and they asked me to help, and that was the wrong question because I wasn't going to help, and they were just being gracious to me, thinking, hey, if you want to get out of here, Tamarack, and you want to take over, you can get us out of here quickly. And I said, no, that's okay. Let's work through this. What can we have for a guide here? It's dark, we can't read the sign. And I had taught them some things about orienteering already, native orienteering, that we couldn't use. And I said, what's happening right now? What are you picking up on? And they said, oh, not much. We can feel the trees ahead of us if we feel around so we don't run into them, and we're stumbling on some fallen logs and such. But what else are you picking up? And, well, the frogs. I hear frogs singing behind us. And I said, well, what direction are the frogs singing from? And they didn't know. They had no idea. And I asked them to backtrack, to envision the trail that we had walked on before we got lost. How did we walk? What did we pass? What did we hear? What do you remember from daylight that we passed? And we retraced our steps, and they remembered this finger of bog that we just walked around. We looped around it, and there was standing water in there, and the spring peepers were singing down there, and they said, "Oh yeah, we remember now. That the frogs are singing behind us. That's in that finger of bog that the trail looped around." And I said, "Well, where does the trail go from there? If we hadn't lost it, where would the trail have gone?" And they remembered, the trail would go about a quarter mile yet until we were out at the trailhead, and that's where we had the vehicle parked. And it was maybe about a third of a mile. And if we walked straight out, the trail looped around a little bit, but essentially the bog would be behind us, and we just keep walking in the opposite direction. And then it dawned on them, oh yeah, if we just keep the sound behind us and just keep walking, so we don't start walking in circles, because that's what we do. Once we lose our bearings, we typically walk in circles. Just keep the sound behind us. And if it sounds a little stronger in your left ear, you turn more to your right ear to pick up on the sound, and you just keep adjusting your direction that way. And sure enough, they let us out. In fact, there was a woman and a man, and the woman took the lead, and she led us out. And we came out to within about 15 or 20 feet of the vehicle, I think, once we hit the trailhead. We came out very close, and they felt so good that they were able to do that, and that and what they learned there, the self-confidence and the tuning into these other senses other than sight, or other than just relying on the trail. And it was an eye-opener for both of them. It was a breakthrough. It was beautiful. And that's what I love, those breakthrough moments with people, when they discover something, they recognize something that they're fully capable of, and they just didn't realize it before. They didn't consciously realize it. So that's an example of sound tracking.
That's a great story. Me and my friend Garth, I think you had talked to him. That's one of our questions that we're always asking ourselves is, what are we missing? What is this invisible link that we just can't quite grasp onto? Because to me, that's what takes you to the next level as a tracker is finding that kind of stuff that you just can't quite put your finger on.
Yeah. You know what it takes? Time. It doesn't take any amount. There's no substitute for it. Forget about the books. If someone asks, what can I best do to evolve my tracking skills, I'm not going to recommend any books, even my own book. I'm not going to recommend any workshops or any tracking schools to go to. Get outside, get out in the woods, and just be. Don't sit, but be. Immerse yourself, move around. What interests you? What's drawing you? Go there. Wander around, pick up on things. And it just starts occurring exponentially. And you've got to spend some time. An hour or two doesn't do it. You're just shaking off your city consciousness in an hour or two. You've got to spend some real time. Without a destination, without a goal, because as soon as we're goal-oriented, we think, I'm going to hike from point A to point B. Well, we have a focus, and that gets back to what I was talking about before about seeing versus looking. Right away when we have a focus, we're goal-oriented, and all of our senses are keened in to getting to point B. And even though we might not be noticing things and taking little side trips, but they're side trips. That's the problem. We're not fully immersed in the moment. Now, we just need to be for the sake of being. Just go there and let happen what happens. And now we can start learning.
Right. That's awesome. Is there anything else you might want to talk about, sir?
Let's see. How much time do we have to start with?
Well, we still got 40
what do we have
minutes.
Left?
40 minutes, yes, sir. But we don't have to spend that whole time. I know you're a busy guy.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't mind spending it either. And, it's quality over quantity. I just don't want to fill in time either. So if we have things to talk about, and there's plenty to share, what I'd like to encourage people to do, encourage all your listeners, is to forget all that you know, or forget all that you think you know. Set it aside. You're not building on knowledge you already have, because a lot of what we already have, it might be good and useful knowledge, don't get me wrong, but if we've started to build a house already, we're building a foundation and we've got the frame up and the walls, and then we start realizing, I don't know. I'm learning a whole lot about house building, and I don't know if I want a regular house. I might want to build a cabin further in the woods, or I might want to adapt this to solar or something. And you keep trying to retrofit this house, and you're goofing around with it, and you've got this foundation you're working with, and you've got these materials you already bought. Imagine if you could just scratch it all and just dream. Dream your ideal house. Dream one that has a greenhouse on the south side and solar collectors and big windows that leave in the sunlight so you can overlook the woods, and just everything that is coming alive in you that you want to reflect in the house. It's the same with learning to track, with reconnecting with nature. Throw out everything you think you know already, all that knowledge and stuff, and leave your books at home. Don't take any books in the woods. Field guides, forget it. And I'll tell you why. When I have a field guide with me, let's say I have a guide to birds, and I see that warbler up there. That warbler has a beautiful yellow breast, and look at that yellow streak through the eye. I wonder what kind of warbler that is. And I get the bird book out, and I look in the warbler section, and I see, that could be a Tennessee warbler, or I think it's a Tennessee warbler. Yeah, look at that. The size fits, and I say, okay, I know that bird. It's a Tennessee warbler. And you close your book and you go on. What did you learn? You learned to identify a Tennessee warbler. You see where I'm going with this? If I didn't have the book with me, what would I do? I would sit there and I'd watch that bird, and I'd pick up on all the signs, not just the couple signs like the breast and the streak through the eye that would identify the bird, but what else am I noticing here? Warblers are very highly evolved to inhabit a particular niche in a tree. Some warblers will forage on the outside of trees. Some warblers will forage high. Some will forage low. Some warblers are more under the canopy and I would notice, oh, where's this warbler hanging out? And, that warbler's singing. It must be a male. That means the nest is around. And, I wonder where the nest is. So I'm watching. And he goes and flies and grabs a bug and flies it back to the nest. Oh, I see the nest is right over there. And look at all that I'm learning just because I'm present and watching, instead of just trying to identify a name with a face. And this is why I suggest to leave field guides at home. You can always, when you get home later, find the name if you want, And I often make up names. I would say, hey, I know that's a warbler. I'm going to call it a yellow stripe-eyed warbler because there's that yellow stripe right through the eye, and it's really distinctive. Now I've got my own name that means something. Tennessee warbler, what does that mean? Does that mean someone from Tennessee named the warbler, or the warbler flew up from Tennessee, or was first discovered in Tennessee? I don't know. It means nothing. Now, if I say, yellow stripe through the eye warbler, anyone I tell that name to is going to click with, oh, a warbler with the yellow stripe through the eye. Hey, now I have a picture in my mind, And this is what I learned. I study the native language here, the Ojibwe language, and their names for things mean something. Like the name for deer is Wawashkeshi, and you hear that Wawashkeshi, and you can just hear the wishing of the grasses when they're going through the meadow, and you just get the feel for the animal, or when the animal's taking off and running. Yeah. That's developing a relationship. Even our human names, we have names like Steve and Joe and Bob, and what do they mean? Well, they just mean that's what our parents liked the name, so they slapped it on us, What does it say about me? What does it say about you?
Nothing.
Yeah. Now, with a name like Weasel Bear, that means something to me because I know weasel and I know bear, and I get a picture right away of maybe some characteristics of yours, some qualities of yours, or some ways that you relate, and that means something, and I'll never forget that name. If you introduced yourself to me as Steve or Jim, I'm bad with names. I wouldn't remember. With enough repetition, I would for sure, but still the name would mean nothing to me, and I'd say, hey, to somebody else, hey, I did a radio interview with Steve last night. Who's Steve? I'll say, I can explain who you are, but if I say I did a radio interview with Weasel Bear, they get a picture right away. Oh, wow, this must be a person who knows who he is. And you tell me about him. I bet it was a great interview with somebody like that. See, there's something going on right away there. There's a relationship. And it's the same with being in the woods. Go out there to be there. Not to learn something, and not to study something, just to be immersed. It's all about relationship, and I say this so often. It's all about relationship. Just relax into this relationship. Just like me with the pack of wolves. I just go there. I don't have any agenda when I go to join the pack. What happens. We're just living a life together, And that's what we do in the woods, just go and live the life of the woods. And then things start to happen. Because I've wiped my slate clean, I'm completely open to this experience. I give myself over to the woods. I'm a child of the mother, a child of the earth. Teach me, Mother. And there we go.
That is awesome, and it makes so much sense. Yep, it sure does. I've blown a couple good opportunities of watching and learning birds and their behavior because of field guides. That was a perfect example.
Oh, great.
Yep. Yes, sir. Great. So, I'm a Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa up in Michigan, and I'm just wondering if it's if the Ojibwe language is universal. If I said Winneweenan Nisisitutung, is that, I have to wonder if that's the same language you learned, just not even on tracking, but
yep, same language.
Wow. Okay.
Same language. Yeah, the southwestern Ojibwe speak generally the same dialect. When you go from band to band, you're going to see some differences. Like anin is the greeting. Anin means hey, greetings, essentially, and in some dialects it's ani without the n on the end. But it's close enough that you can understand it easily. Just like English, you're from the South and you have a you speak with a Southern accent, and you have some terms that we don't have up here. And I'm from the North. I have a Northern accent here, and I use some terms for things that you don't use. We can still understand each other perfectly well, though. Not a problem.
We say you'uns, and you say you guys.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Right.
Just a joke.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, in the Southeast is you all. And in Texas it's y'all.
I try not to say that. Yeah, they do say that in Arkansas. I don't.
They do too, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's an example. Yeah. Well, you're Ojibwe. That's beautiful. Yeah. My mate Letty is a Ojibwe language teacher.
That is awesome. Yeah. I want to learn more. I'm just I got my feelers out in 1,000 directions already. It's hard to break off onto another whole learning. But heck yeah. It says Bear, the master man tracking teacher, shows how to find and trail people. Is that through scent?
It's through becoming the bear. What I talk about in there is like we just talked about, letting everything go that you think you know, leaving the field guides behind, and going out. And bear sign is actually fairly easy to find, in part because bears move much the same way we do because they're omnivores. They'll eat berries, they'll eat meat, they'll eat greens. They just eat a wide variety of foods. And when we're out foraging, we do the same thing. And I oftentimes run across bears when I'm out foraging, or bear sign, bear scat, bear tracks, because we're running the same territory. And the way bears travel, too, is very much the way humans do. They like walking the edge, and we do, too, if we're in our native mindset. What civilized people will often do is they'll look for open land. They'll go and walk a hilltop or a ridgetop. And that's crazy because you're fully exposed up there. You're easy to see. And everybody and everything else can see you. It's ridiculous. If you're hunting or if you don't want to be seen or if you want to see wildlife, it's the last thing you want to do. But that's the first thing we do. We get out in the open because that's what we learned. The city is walking out in the open on sidewalks, and we drive out in the open, on roads where it's all cleared. It's just what we're accustomed to. At school, you play sports. It's out in a sport field, or you're out throwing a frisbee. You get out in the open and do it. Pretty much everything we do is out in the open. So what we do if we're in our native mindset is that we're going to travel the edge. Like, say there's a hillside that's coming down and meets a wetland. Well, I'm not going to climb up the hill and walk the top of the hill. I'm going to go down along that edge where the hillside meets the wetland, because that's where there's the life. We've got the wetland species right there, and we've got the richness and the water, the moisture, and a lot of berries are growing along there and herbs and such. And that's where I'm going to be walking. I'm walking the edge if I'm foraging. And if I'm hunting, because that's where the animals are. That's where the most life is. And also, if I'm tracking bears, that's where I'm going to go, because that's where they're walking, because they forage in the same way we do. So in order to learn to track bears, I become the bear, and I get literally down on my hands and knees oftentimes because some of the territory they go through has overgrowth. There are shrubs growing over. Rather than pushing through and standing up, I'm missing everything they're seeing. So I get down. And the amazing thing is that once you get down, a whole new world opens up because the shrubs and the brush have a canopy of leaves on top. However, the lower branches are all died off because there's no light under there. And you can see for a long distance underneath if you just get down. So I get down and I'll crawl for a while. I'll crawl right on that bear trail. And I see what they see, and I see where their side trails go off, and I follow that side trail. I might never have seen it if I was standing up, looking over the vegetation. And I'll go off to the side, and I'll see, oh, this bear went down to the edge of the swamp there. I wonder why. And I go down there, and there I see, oh, she heard this, must have been a family of raccoons there, and the little cubs were out, and she went down and she nabbed a couple of them last night when she was walking by. And I see that. I see the sign. I see the old tracks there and a little bit of a scuffle, and I would have never seen that otherwise. Oh, I see. Well, that's a neat trick. If I ever am in a survival situation or I need to get some food or feed the family, I just go out and get down here in the evening and wait for a family of raccoons to come by, and I could grab a couple of those pups pretty easily, I bet, just like the bear. So you see what I'm doing here? I'm learning about the bears by becoming the bear, getting down there, feeling what a bear feels, and walking in literally in the bear's footprints. So that's what that chapter is all about, learning to track from bears. And when I'm doing that, when I'm learning to track bears, I'm learning to track humans also. That is native humans, because native people are going to be doing the same thing. They're moving along with the bears. And it's interesting. You're related to the Ojibwe people, and I've got, my elders are Ojibwe, and they consider their closest relative to be bear, Makwa. Makwa is bear in the Ojibwe language. You might know that. And the reason is just that, because we have so many strong parallels. And we learn even some of the medicines from bear. When bear comes out of hibernation in the springtime, bear, Makwa, goes to certain herbs to eat as a cleanser to get the bowels going again. And, we follow bear and we see what bear is eating. Oh, yeah, these are some good medicinal herbs. I'm learning some of this from bear. And we can use some of the same plants, some of the same herbs for medicines. My father-in-law told me a story about a bear who was wounded from hunting, got shot in the chest, and he watched the bear go down into the into this wet area and scrape around and dug up some clay and got this clay up and plastered this clay over the wound. And that's a native healing technique, to use clay because it's very absorbent, and then you can use clay to seal the wound off because clay is very close-grained. So these are the things we can learn from bear if we're following bear. I guess I'm getting a little off track.
No, that's great. That's awesome. Most of the people that, most trackers are also naturalists and primitive skills technicians. So, it's all connected. I mean, it really is. And what you're saying and what you've been talking about is exactly what everybody is wanting to hear. I can guarantee you that.
Well, great. I hope I'm not boring anybody. It's just there's so much to share. We start on one thing, and a thread becomes a web. If you look at a spider spinning a web, it starts with one thread, and you go back a little bit later, and there are more threads connected, and they're interconnected. And that's what the web of life is all about. The web is such a beautiful metaphor, because when you touch one web in a spider web, or one strand in a spider web, the whole thing moves. Everything is related. And that's the way these stories are. You can ask me a question, or we're out in the woods and we're noticing something, or I'm out and just experiencing things. And it's not just one thing. It's this one thing that connects with something else, with something else, with something else. And this is the way to learn, because now we have a broad base of knowledge. We don't just have facts. We don't just have data. We don't just have our memory. Oh, this track is coyote track is average of 2.1 to 2.5 inches long, and the front track is blah, blah, and all that. No, I know the track. I know the spirit of the track. That's what I learned from going out there and becoming coyote and walking in coyote's tracks. Those measurements mean very little to me after a while. It doesn't matter.
That's kind of where I'm at. I've done the track measuring and stuff, and my weak spot is on telling gates apart. But I just like to be out there and trying to find it, feel it, and trail. And just exactly. I'm trying to work on that becoming the animal and stuff. I love that. It's more organic, I guess. I don't know what all word to explain it. It's just more real.
Yeah. You bet. You got it. Yeah. And it takes some mental untraining, because we're so naturally drawn to facts and figures, to data, to rational knowledge. And I ought to specify here that I'm not bad wrapping knowledge. Rational knowledge is important. It's good. We're given a rational mind for a reason. However, it's really an adjunct. It's really supposed to be, it evolved to be, to assist our deeper mind, our animal mind, not to take over. We call ourselves rational beings. Yes, we have rational capacities, but our rational mind evolved very late in our evolution. We have deeper minds, our intuitive mind, our sensing, our feeling mind. That's where we really function from. If we were just rational-minded creatures, we would be computers. What kind of life would that be? Very flat, dismal life. Yeah, we're feeling, caring, connected, relationship-oriented beings, and all of that is embedded in our deeper mind. And the rational mind helps and supports that. With solving problems and figuring out solutions and remembering points of knowledge. That's all great. However, that has to come secondary if we're going to be native trackers.
Throughout this interview, I've kind of noticed that you have a questioning awareness. So questioning is definitely a very important role while we are out in nature. Any other skills that we should work on or try to develop besides questioning?
Yeah, reawakening our senses, and it's not too hard to do. In your house, for example, you go through the same motions all the time. Let's say you have your bedroom upstairs. You walk to the steps, you go up the steps, and you turn left at the hallway, and you're the first bedroom on the right. How often do you do that? 1,000 times, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 times in a year. Do it blindfolded. Just when you come in the house, put on a blindfold. You carry a bandana in your pocket. Put on a blindfold, and go through all these motions, and you're going to feel unsure of yourself at first, but you know it. You have this memory in your feet already because you've done the same steps so often. The first 2 or 3 times, you're going to feel a little awkward, and after a while, you're going to do it as though you're able to see. You're just going to walk right in, and here's the wall, and you turn, and you're going up 14 steps, and you turn left, and what you're doing is you're empowering your other senses. When we shut one sense down, that energy goes to your other senses. Now all of a sudden your sense of hearing is sharper. And you might notice that the closer you walk to the wall where the steps go up, the more different your echo feels from your feet hitting the floor, the hardwood floor. Oh yeah, I can hear that echo, and it's oh yeah, I'm there. I can tell just by hearing, and you never noticed that before because you were relying on sight. So that's a great exercise to do. Just blindfold yourself in familiar places only, so that your other senses can come to play.
Wow.
Also, your sense of touch. You know, you're going to come closer. You can tell by hearing, by the way your echo off of your feet is coming back to you. Then you just put your hand out there just to touch with your fingertips. Oh yeah, here's the wall, just to reassure, so that you know where to turn. So your sense of touch is coming more alive. And you can do this in a lot of different ways. Out in the woods, when we have a trail out to camp, from the trailhead, I have the students walk it blindfolded after they get to know it. They're walking the whole mile blindfolded. And they're feeling along at first, and they'll just do sections of the trail at first, sections of the trail that they're feeling comfortable with, that they know real well. And they just add to that, and they do more and more and more of the trail. And some of them end up walking the whole trail blindfolded. And they're noticing so much more. When they come into camp after walking the trail blindfolded, you ask them, well, how was your walk? Oh, I heard this, and I ran into that, and I felt this cool breeze coming off of the bog, and hey, there's a southerly wind, I realized, because it'd be a warm breeze coming off of the sunny hillside on the other side, and they're telling me this whole story, and most of it they would have missed if they came in by sight. So, and once we do this for a while, our senses are awakened, and now you don't have to do it blindfolded anymore because you're using all your senses. Now it just comes naturally. So
that is really cool. I had somebody. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say I've got some more exercises too, and we don't have a whole lot of time to get through them all, I know. But I have another book called Journey to the Ancestral Self, and in the back of that book, I wrote that back in '95, and in the back of that book, I have sensory attunement exercises, and I also have exercises for enlivening our dormant mental processes, which is just as important. We use
that's all in Journey to the Ancestral Self.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. I'll be getting that.
Yeah, it's all right. It's what I share in there is a lot of the stuff that I learned from the elders about living natively, about reconnecting with what it is to be human. I talk in there about what clan life is all about, who the guardian warrior is, how to tell time by the moons and the sun rather than by the clock and the calendar. Just all the various aspects of native lifeway. How to live in honor and respect. How to be with the animals. Some of the stuff we're talking about here, some of the basic stuff is in that book. So that's really the kind of the primer book to get people started who want to reconnect with what it is to be human. And the last third of the book includes these exercises I'm talking about. And then I've got shadowing exercises in there. Some of the things I learned from the wolves, from shadowing the wolves, I share some of that in the book.
That is great. I'm going to be getting that one for sure, too.
Great.
I had a text come in, and Garth was wanting to know, is there a specific role of the tracker in the hoop of life?
That's a beautiful question. There is a very vital role, and that is the role of using the track to find our place in the hoop of life. And a good example, let's take the wolves and their relationship with the caribou further north where I live here up in Canada. The wolf is a tracker and the caribou is a tracker. And the role they each play is vital. And it has to do with tracking because the wolves track the caribou and the caribou also track the wolves. We think of prey-predator relationships, but it's really not that way. And we think of wolf packs. I was talking about alpha males earlier with the dominant male. Well, that's only from our perspective because we come from a hierarchical structure. But when the wolves are tracking the caribou, if the wolves aren't hungry, you see the wolves meandering right through a caribou herd, and the caribou don't pay them any attention because they know they're not hungry. It's only when the wolves get hungry and the wolves start, they get that look in their eyes and they're starting to case the herd over to see where there's a weak animal they might be able to catch. The caribou get skittish and they start moving, and if the wolves are moving along with them, the caribou will start running. And it's a game, it's a dance, because when the wolves chase the caribou want to run because this is what keeps the caribou strong. They don't get any exercise otherwise. And it also weeds out the sick and the old. And if they have any surplus young that fall behind, the wolves are going to get them. The caribou need this. Yes, there's fear, there's fright, but fear pumps the adrenaline. It feels good. It feels good to... have you ever gotten scared? People go to horror movies, right? To get scared. It feels good. There's something there. And we think of it as being, it's so terrible. But no, the caribou are in their bliss now. It's a terrible bliss for sure. One of them is going to get killed. But that's the way of life. That's the way of death. Death is life and life is death. And they all know this, and they play this dance together. And the wolves are chasing the caribou. And there might be one with a lame leg. He got caught between a couple of rocks. And that animal's falling behind. And that's the animal the wolves grab. And that's the animal the caribou want the wolves to grab, want the wolves to grab because that caribou is lame and is holding the herd behind, and that caribou is going to get sick perhaps, there's an infection there that's because of the wound, and the caribou herd needs to stay healthy. They need to stay lean and mean in order to be able to move when they need to move. They've got a migration to go on. To get out of the taiga before the snow and the cold come, because they have to get down in the trees, and there's this eternal rhythm going on. And the same with the wolves. The wolves need the caribou, and the caribou need the wolves. And here's what tracking is all about. It's about this relationship of the tracker and the tracked. And you think of the wolves tracking their prey. Well, the prey are tracking the wolves too, and the prey are tracking something else. You think, this animal's a vegetarian, this animal's not a tracker. Oh yeah, this animal has to track down her food in order to live, in order to reproduce, in order to make the sweet milk for her fawns. Everything is tracking. Even the women and the kids track in native cultures. The women are going out to get firewood. They have to track down that firewood. They need to know where the dead trees are. One of them's going to climb a tree and scout the area and see where there might have been a burn or where there's disease in the trees, where there are a lot of dead trees that are falling where they can get at the tops to break off. That is tracking. And, I think I lost track of his question. What was his question to start with?
It was, is there a role of a tracker in the web of life?
Oh, okay, the role of the tracker, that's what I'm on. See, I lost track. I used the term.
No, but that's okay, because it's all connected, and you're just telling it how it is, so we're loving it.
Yeah, good. Well, here's the role of the tracker. Even plants track. Plants have to track a way to find water. They have to track a way to disperse their seed in order that plant can perpetuate itself. Everything is tracking in some way. You notice that some plants track the sunlight. They'll turn to face the sun. They're tracking the sun. So everything that has life tracks. And the role of the tracker is to weave this web of relationship. That would probably be the simplest definition. The role of the tracker, and that is the tracking ability in each of us, is to keep this web woven strong and tight. Because, a spider web deteriorates over time, and we have to put in these new strands. And these new strands keep connecting the track and the tracker and the tract and the tracker. And this is what keeps us strong. This is what keeps us vibrant. This is what keeps the caribou herd going. The caribou herd has to be tracked, or the caribou are going to overpopulate. They're going to eat out their range. They're going to start starving. Disease is going to spread through. They have to have the wolves track them. And they have to be able to track their trail, their old trail, their ancestral trail going down into the trees in the autumn. So they get off of the open tundra and taiga where they would freeze, and it would all freeze over and they wouldn't have anything to eat. So there's always this tracking that's going on all the time. And this is the web of life. It's the web of the track.
Wow. So it really is. It's just all interconnected. And the role of the tracker is to find the connection, see the connection, and be the connection.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it.
Wow. We're so glad we've had Tamarack Song on tonight. You guys, you really need to check out his website, Teaching Drum Outdoors up in Wisconsin. Tamarack has many writings and books, and he has done a ton of work through the years. His knowledge is outstanding. I urge you to learn from this man. He's a great mentor. We are very glad to have had you on tonight, Tamarack.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Weasel Bear. I so much appreciate this opportunity to share some of my stories. And the important thing I'd like to stress is that, these are my stories, and you're going to read about my stories in the book. But really what this is all about is it's a metaphor for your stories, your skills, your abilities. We're all related, and we all have the same ability within us. And again, Weasel Bear, I really appreciate the opportunity here. You asked some great questions that got me going. I really appreciate it. And if ever we can have this opportunity again, just give me a holler. I'd be glad to come back again. This was fun.
Well, this is great. We will definitely have you back on. Like I said, you have so much to teach, and, there's never enough time. I'm going to have to make my way up to Wisconsin and visit you, and I hope everybody else can get a hold of your book, Entering the Mind of the Tracker, and perhaps some of your other ones, Ancestral Self. You can find him on Amazon. You can find him on the Internet. Just type in Tamarack Song. He's been around for a long time. He has wrote in many different magazines and articles. A lot of stuff from Tamarack Song. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Look
you
forward
have a good
to next
evening.
time.
Yes,
Likewise.
sir. Thank you.
So long.
Thank you. Bye-bye.